Click, click. Hello everyone, this is Taka from Bigheadtaco.com, and I am here to introduce to you on January the 15th, 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 9 p.m. here on the West Coast, the new Fujifilm X-Pro 2. Now, the X-Pro 2 camera is probably the most anticipated Fujifilm X-Series body ever. I will say that. In terms of, there's been such a build-up of the X-Pro series, the Fujifilm X series cameras that this camera is probably, people expected it to come out like last year, but now it feels delayed. But since it's delayed, our wait is over, and now we're super excited to have it. Now, to talk about the X-Pro 2, we need to go into a little bit of the history of the X series. So let me just grab my notes here very quickly. Now, when the X100 first came out, it was announced on September 19th, 2010. So it just turned 2016. So it's been about 5 years since the X series has been out in the market. And when the X100 came out, it just blew people's minds. Having that hybrid optical electronic viewfinder, it seemed like that was sort of the characteristic of the X series. There's a sense of nostalgia that goes back to the film era, but it's trying to be implemented into the digital realm. And at that time, Fuji's vision was further ahead than the actual technology, meaning the X100 wasn't the fastest focusing. You know, it used a technology that even the RAW files could not be read, and Adobe wouldn't support the RAW files for the longest time, so you had to use a silky pick system. And it took a while for the technology to catch up, and I would say not until the XT1 did the X series fully mature, and one can feel confident in the X series. And then on January 9th, 2012, the X Pro 1, which right here, the X Pro 1 was released. Just very quickly, I'm going to do a comparison a little bit later, but you could see they look identical. I had to tape up. This is a pre-production model, so I had to tape it up so people couldn't tell what it was, but nobody asked me anyway, so that's great. It's a very understated camera. And so the X Pro 1 was announced January 9th, 2012, and again, it appeared with the hybrid optical electronic viewfinder. And so many of us film guys that transition into digital, or many of the young hipster digital guys that sort of had a sense of they wanted to connect with the old film cameras. The Fuji X series was a perfect balance of that. Leica is similar, but you know, how many of you guys can afford the Leica? And so since 2012, people have been waiting for another hybrid optical electronic viewfinder interchangeable lens camera. And after that, the XE1 was announced, and then the XT1, the XT10. So it seemed like Fuji may abandon that hybrid optical electronic viewfinder when it came to the interchangeable lens camera system. And so I think that's kind of what the build up to the anticipation. Some were wondering, will the X Pro 2 have a hybrid viewfinder, or will they just go like the XT1 and just go EVF? And so I have been in talks. I've been communicating with the Fuji guys back in Toronto and other Fuji camera reviewers and other industry insiders, and we were confident that the X Pro 2 will retain the optical and electronic viewfinder, and so here it is. So they've maintained that. Now, as I mentioned, this is a pre-production model. So this, I'll show some pictures that I've taken with it. Amazing pictures, blown away. Because it's pre-production, at this time that I have the camera, there has been no RAW support. So I tried to open up in Lightroom and CS5 and as well as the Photoshop Cloud, the CC. No support. The Wi-Fi app doesn't work. So I feel like I'm kind of in this island where I have very little way, like if I type in X Pro 2 on the internet, there's nothing out there except all the rumor sites. And so I didn't even get a manual with this. So at this time that I got it, there's no manual. So there's even some features in here that I still have no idea how it works. And I know some other photographers, other media photographers and other industry insiders that also have their own pre-production model of the X-Pro 2. And we've been sort of secretly communicating with each other and just trying to figure out, like, what's this mean? Have you figured this feature out? So one of it has to do with film grain, and I haven't tried that yet, and other guys have. And so, there's been no explanation, and that's fine. I do have an official spec sheet, which I was told that at the time when I was given it, this may change. So it's 3 pages. For all you guys, freeze your screen and look at it. But, I'm not going to go over these. There's just kind of nerd specs. I'll go over the main specs that I think will be of interest to most people. So let's go over very quickly. So I'm going to put the camera down. But anyways, this is it here. This is the back here. There's been enough rumor releases, so you all know what it's supposed to look like, right? But so it is a 24.3 megapixel APS-C X-Trans CMOS 3 sensor. Okay, and here Fuji says it reduces moire and false colors to dramatically improve image quality. Sounds like a marketing line. I'm telling you, this sensor is amazing. And the images that I'm getting out of it, so I'm only looking at the JPEG files, not the RAW files. I can convert the RAW files in camera and then convert it over to JPEG using some of the film simulations, but it's still not the same as looking. But you all know that I'm a huge fan of the Fujifilm JPEGs anyways, but amazing, amazing. I've compared it with full frame sensors, and in some instances at high ISO speeds, the Fujifilm actually has lower noise than some full frame sensors. So crazy, crazy sensor. Can't wait for the RAW, to process the RAW files outside of the camera. Now, this is one of the things that should get people excited because it's more about the future. It's a high performance X Processor Pro image processing engine. And now what it says here is increases response times combined with the X-Trans CMOS 3 sensor. So it's not going to be used with the older sensor. It achieves faster AF, lower noise, and better color reproduction. So the term Pro, I'm happy that Fuji is now starting to designate, there's going to be a clear difference between their Pro processor and their consumer level one. So as we see Fujifilm upgrading legacy bodies like the XT1, so maybe it'll be XT1 Pro or XT2 Pro, maybe even an X100 or X200P, as in the professional model, you'll see this Pro processor being used. Now we know about the hybrid viewfinder, amazing. It is, I've compared it with the XT1 and the X100T, night and day. So this viewfinder will blow away even the older. Now the XT1 is a larger viewfinder, but this is low light is better. Being able to focus speak is better. Refresh, maybe it's not better, but it seems better. But amazing viewfinder in both optical and electronic viewfinder mode. The shutter has been improved. It has 1/8,000th of a second top shutter speed, mechanical, but the flash sync has been up to 1/250th of a second, which is great. The XT1, I think, was 1/180th, so there's an improvement there. So it is a different shutter, as well as electronic up to 1/32,000th of a second. Now this part, I'm not huge on AF specs because to me, mirrorless is not up there yet with the Pro DSLRs. But in terms of specs, it's intelligent hybrid phase detect AF with 273 selectable AF points. And so you can group them. I mean, who wants to flip through 273 different AF points? So you can group them larger or bigger. And so that is great. And of course, you may have already seen there's a quick joystick access here. So it's very fast to pick your focus points. I've never been a fan of these joysticks, but as I was shooting with it, I realized in some instances, especially if you're shooting with a tripod, it's great to be able to frame your image, quickly pick your AF points, especially when it comes to people coming into your frame, find the focus point, and then shoot with it. So that is great. So AF is definitely improved over the XT1. The body is pretty reasonably lightweight. It says 459 grams, and it is a weather-resistant magnesium alloy chassis. And you can actually see that in the body when you open up the, I mean, this is nice and solid. You can see there's a rubber gasket in here, and it's very well built. The button feel. The XT1, one of the biggest things I complained about is how the buttons didn't feel like, you could tell it was sealed, but because of it, there wasn't much travel or feel. This feels great. You can't even tell that it's weather sealed. So this is, well, it's weather resistant, right? Now, the rear screen on this, I have not come across this. It probably is out there on the market, but it uses a 1.62 million dot resolution rear LCD. So 1.62. The old X-Pro one was 1.23 million, which is still the highest out of any X series rear screens, but 1.62, and you can see the difference. It's definitely sharper. When you zoom in, you can really see if something's in focus. You can see the noise right away. And so if you want to use the rear LCD, other than using the EVF, you can see the difference and an upgrade there. Dual slot. You have dual slots in here now. You have the what is it called now? UHS Type 2 in slot 1, and you have the Type 1 in slot 2. And they have a cool feature in here where you can, there's 3 different ways you can use the two slots. One is in sequence. So once slot 1 is finished, it will automatically go to slot 2. The second thing you can do is you can use it as a backup. So whatever you're doing in slot 1, which means, let's say you're shooting both RAW and JPEG, and that's going to slot in your card 1, it will duplicate that. So the exact duplicate. So if anything happens to your card 1, your backup card 2 will do it. Make sure the card speeds are the same if you're doing it that way. And secondary, slot 1 is going to be faster anyway. So, you know, beware of that. There's different speeds. But the way I think is really cool is that the second one is you can actually split your RAW and JPEG files. So in slot 1, it'll save your RAW files. And in slot 2, it'll save your JPEGs. And so as a working professional commercial photographer, you can think about it this way. Slot 2 on your JPEGs, you can actually save it as a low-res JPEG, right? In the small JPEG. And so you can actually give the card right away to your client as just for proofing. And then you keep your card 1, slot 1, and your RAW file, and that's for you to keep. So those are the 3 ways you can use it. So 2 card slots, that's excellent. That's something that I actually really enjoyed using, having that second slot there. ISO performance, it is ISO 200 to 12,800. Safely shoot up to 6400. I didn't even bother trying at 12,800, and plus the fact that I can't see the RAW files, I'm only seeing what the JPEG rendition is, so I didn't bother. But I would say comfortably shooting 3200, 6400 using this, and I've pixel peeped it, and it looks fantastic even at 3200. Now there's film simulation. They've added the Acros monochrome mode, which is what Fujifilm's black and white film. Now, people and I work for Kodak, and I'm used to the Tri-X and the T-Max black and white films. Acros, gotta be honest, I've never shot with it, so I am interested in seeing how this looks like. So we'll see how that works out. This is another one that ones that like working with RAW files, is that it has a 14-bit RAW file it produces with lossless compression and in-camera processing. So it does allow you to choose between uncompressed or compressed RAW files. I have yet to test those two. I'm sure others will do it in the future. I'm not a huge RAW guy anyways. I probably will just use a compressed version of it, but you can choose between compressed or uncompressed. So that is great for those that are really looking for the maximum amount of image quality, if you're looking for noise and dynamic range. New menu system. The verdict is still out on it. It definitely looks different. It has the new section called it's your My settings. So as soon as you go into your menus, it goes into your My, and you get to choose what sits in there. So it's almost like the Q button, but it allows you access into more features that the Q button cannot come up with. So that's cool. But because of that, a lot of things have been moved around in the menu system. So some things I actually got lost in here because, for instance, if you're looking for your data, how to save your data setup, you have to go into the save data setup when I talked about how to use the 2 slots. And then when you want to go to select JPEG and RAW, then you got to go into a different menu setting. So you are jumping around a bit. You'll need to relearn where everything is, or you set up your own My Menus and set up the way that you want, which means you can just mirror how the old menu system was, and then just mirror that and create your own menu system there and not use Fuji's new setup. So I'm still working my way through it. I don't, I get lost in it, but that's only because I'm not used to it. So that's a new feature. But having that My settings is, My Menu settings is actually a great feature. TTL, 256 zone metering. I don't really care too much about TTL. Once you know how to expose, you will always override whatever the processor tells you what the exposure should be. So that's not a big deal for me. I haven't been able to use the Wi-Fi remote yet. And it does include the Instax Share printer compatibility. So I'll try all that in the future. There is an unusual feature. This took a while. And actually, Kurt Dahl, he's the one that we figured what it means. I was even with John, and even John Lehman, he couldn't figure out what it was. But on the exposure compensation dial, there's one section called C, and it's like, well, what does C mean? If you go into C mode here, and you look inside your screen, it gives you on your exposure compensation. It's very tiny though; it's hard to see. It gives you plus or minus 5 exposure and third stops. And so if you need to go 5 exposures up and down, you go into the C mode. Personally, I think that makes no sense. Sorry, Fuji. I still say you do not need third stops in exposure compensation. That this should only be in half stops. So if you go in half stops, you probably get 5 stops anyway. So let's just see here. So 1 stop, 2 stop, 3 stop, 4 stop. So actually you'll get 4 stops. So you get 4 stops anyways, and there's enough room there that if they wanted to go 5th stop, it would work, but in half stop increments. And so I would still say I would not switch over to C, and then now you no longer are looking at this, or you're not going by feel. You actually have to look at the screen to see if you're anything over 3 stop exposure compensation. And by that time you're exposing by 3 stops, more than 3 stops, then you should just shoot manually anyways. And you look at your exposure meter in the bottom, and you can tell how much you're above or below what the camera tells you. So, someone, as I shoot with it, we'll see if that makes sense. But the whole reason why it's here is that you can access it quickly, right? And not have it menu driven. So to me, that's okay. Creative filters, don't care about that. Now you get the full HD 1080p 60 frames per second, but that's not a great thing. I mean, that's nothing special. All the new Fuji X series cameras has that. It's using the same battery as all the other big X series bodies. The what is it called? The NP126W. So that's great. You can, even from the original X Pro one, you can swap the batteries out. So that's fantastic. So shooting with it, one of the things, it's funny, it wasn't mentioned in the listing here, is and you may have already seen it on all the rumor sites, is the ISO access is now on the integrated into the your shutter speed dial, and that is the sort of props to the old school film cameras. Those of us that had them, that you can actually adjust your ISO here. I was actually going to do a video about antiquated functionality in modern cameras that try to use retro styling, where the feature no longer serves a functional purpose. And one of the things I was going to mention is most photographers, at least that I talk to, they rarely shoot in shutter speed priority. And if they do, it's more DSLR guys, and they can quickly come in and out of it. This shutter speed dial, I've rarely used it. Only time I've used it is if I'm shooting with a external flash and I want to sync at a particular speed. But other than that, I felt that it was a waste of a dial to have shutter speed here. I mean, it looks sexy. It reminds you of film cameras, but if you only use it, for me, I'd say I use it 5% of the time, and that's when I use fill flash. But I've talked to some photographers that say they've never ever used the shutter speed dial. And so why waste this much real estate on this camera if you rarely use it? I always thought this should be converted into something else other than shutter speed. And one of the things I was going to recommend is, why won't that be an ISO dial? Like being able to adjust your ISO right away. And as I was preparing that video, guess what? Fujifilm integrated that. So you know what? That's the best of both worlds. Instead of me ranting about getting rid of it, they've kept it so I could still shoot in shutter speed priority and set it to my flash sync, or I can still adjust the ISO here right away. So that's actually a great implementation on the X-Pro 2. Another great implementation is no more buttons on the left side. It's all been moved over to the right side, and they have this little ridge here that was on the original X-Pro 1, which is great. And all your main, especially this, your joystick controller is right where your thumb wants it to be. They've also maintained the threaded shutter release, which is great. The XT1 got rid of it because of the weather sealing. So I don't know, now this should be just a mechanical button on the inside. So if you are going to be shooting in the rain, I would recommend to get a soft release and just kind of screw it on. And in fact, maybe Fuji should even just give a kind of a cheap plastic plug that comes with the camera so that it does keep it more sealed, because you don't want water stuck in there if you are shooting out in the rain. But I'm glad that they kept that. And as well, you have your four-way controller back here. It feels really nice. And this, one of the things that they didn't mention that you had to figure out for yourself is when you are in optical viewfinder mode and you press that center button while you're in optical, so I'm going to go into optical viewfinder mode, and you get rid of the miniature EVF. And if you do that and you're in manual focus mode, it automatically switches over to the EVF. So at least you can manually focus, and it zooms in as well. And then you half tap and now you're back out. But if you press, there's a custom function button right there in the middle there. And if you press that, you can set it to different custom functions. The one that I like the best, it actually gives you the bright line viewfinder crop lines. So right now with the 35 f2 on here, it gives you 35, 56, 60, and 90. So think about all you Leica shooters that you can adjust and quickly see your different viewfinder frame lines on your Leica by adjusting it over here, which they got rid of on the M240. You can adjust it there. For the Fuji, you can just press the middle button. You can see all your frame lines. And that's also based on what lens you put on there, because I put on the 14mm lens on here, and then it goes as wide as 18. And so it seems like this is designed for 18 up to, let's see here, 18 up to 90 using the optical viewfinder, and that makes complete sense. But using it with the 35 f2 WR, and it has the rangefinder-esque hood so that you can see through it, and I can see through here. You can barely see the edge of the hood, but even if you get rid of it, it's actually invisible now. You cannot see the lens. I mean, you can see it if you move your face, but with the 35mm frame lines, it is not within your frame, and that's actually a good thing. And so I'm going to keep on shooting with this, keep on testing with this. I've had it for a month. Great camera. I'm so excited that this is out, and seeing now how this will be implemented probably in the X200 or the X100Z or whatever the next one will come out, or the X100 Pro. So this is a great future building camera. Pre-production again, so I cannot show you too many pictures. I will get a production model very soon. If you have any comments about the X-Pro 2 or any questions, I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. Just comment or ask questions down below. Like if you like these type of videos, and I will have a production model very shortly. And once I get that, I'm going to really go into the menu systems and basically show you how this camera shoots. But so far, I've loved it. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Happy shooting. Click, click.